All right, so are you ready to really dive deep into what it takes to be a venue programmer?
I'm ready.
Awesome. So we've got all these resources from RoleCatcher.
Mm.
They have career guides, interview guides, and even some cool AI stuff to help people prepare.
Yeah, and what's really cool is that their AI can help you tailor your CV and give you specific feedback based on the job that you're going for.
Oh, totally.
It's like having a career coach in your pocket who's analyzing what employers are looking for.
Yeah, and it seems like they've thought of everything because they have over 120,000 interview questions
Wow.
categorized by different careers so you can practice for this specific role
Nice.
and not just for like general interview questions.
That makes sense.
So to start, I guess we should get a clear picture of what a venue programmer actually does.
Yeah, so basically from the RoleCatcher Career Guide, it says a venue programmer curates artistic lineups for a lot of different types of venues,
Okay.
like theaters, cultural centers, festival, all that good stuff.
Like if I wanted to organize a concert,
Mm-hmm.
I would need a venue programmer.
Yeah, you probably would.
Okay, so they're kind of like the architect,
Right.
but instead of designing buildings, they're designing experiences.
Exactly. And the Career Guide even highlights some of the perks,
Okay, like what?
like getting to work with really cool artists. You get to shape different cultural events.
That's awesome.
You get to build your network within the industry,
so many connections.
and maybe even get some free tickets to shows.
Oh, that's a good book.
But the guide also talks about the other side of it, like how there are really long and irregular hours.
Oh, right. It's not all sunshine and roses.
Yeah, and those high-pressure moments when you're actually at the event, like anything could go wrong.
Of course, you're responsible for everything.
Exactly. So you have to be able to thrive in that kind of environment.
Top.
But if you can handle it, the rewards can be huge.
Okay, so now that we know what the role is, and hopefully you've used the AI to perfect your CV,
Yes.
let's get into the interview questions.
Okay, let's do it.
We're going to go through 10 common questions from RoleCatcher, and I'm going to try to answer them.
Perfect. And I'll chime in with some possible follow-up questions.
Sounds good because interviewers like to dig deeper.
They do.
Like-
It's all about being prepared.
Okay, so the first question is, how would you go about researching and identifying potential event venues? Well, they're not just asking if you can Google venues, right?
No, definitely not. They want to see how you think strategically.
Right.
Like, imagine you're a junior venue programmer and you need to find a space for an up-and-coming indie band.
Okay.
Would you just pick any old stage with a microphone?
Probably not.
No. So this is where you really need to show that you understand the role in the event itself.
Okay.
Like the career guide mentions staying on top of artistic trends. That's super important here.
It makes sense.
So research venues that align with the type of event you're planning, the target audience, the vibe.
Right. Like a death metal band wouldn't play at a coffee shop.
Exactly. And don't forget the logistics, like capacity, technical capabilities, the location accessibility.
And all the boring but important stuff.
It all matters. And you could even mention things like checking online reviews,
Oh, yeah. Good point.
talking to other event planners, maybe even visiting the venues in person.
Yeah, to get a feel for the space.
Have you ever run into a situation where a venue looks perfect online, but then you see it in person and it's completely different?
Oh, all the time.
Really?
Yeah, that's why site visits are so crucial.
Yeah, I bet.
But going back to the question, the career guide also talks about networking.
Yes.
It's super important. You go to industry events, conferences, festivals to meet new people.
Absolutely. You never know who you'll meet.
You could find a hidden gem venue just by chatting with the right person.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's say you've found the perfect spot, but it's a little over budget.
Oh.
How would you handle negotiations?
Well, that leads perfectly into the next question.
Okay, bring it on.
How would you negotiate contracts with venue owners and managers? And remember, you're not just trying to get the lowest price possible.
Right.
You're trying to create a win-win situation.
You both win.
Yeah, show them you can stand up for what you need while still respecting their business.
Okay, so instead of just begging for a lower price, what could you do?
Well, you could highlight the benefits of hosting your specific event.
Okay, so like what?
Like maybe your event will attract a new audience for them, or maybe it will boost their venue's reputation. Or maybe it just aligns with the type of events that they want to have there anyway.
Yeah, so you have to find common ground.
Exactly. Negotiation is a two-way street.
Okay, so you can't just make demands.
No, you should always have other options ready.
Okay.
Like maybe you could be flexible with the dates or the times to better fit their schedule.
That makes sense.
Or you could even explore doing some co-promotion.
Where you both benefit.
Exactly. So be
Yeah.
flexible and be creative.
Be a problem solver.
Yes.
And it wouldn't hurt to familiarize yourself with these standard contract terms and all the legal stuff.
Right, show them you're serious.
Yeah, you know what you're talking about.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's imagine the contracts are signed, the venue's booked.
Yeah.
Now what?
Well, now you need to make sure everything runs smoothly.
Of course, that's a big part of being a venue programmer.
Right. So the next question is, how do you ensure events run smoothly and according to plan?
Oh boy.
This is where you show off all your organization skills and attention to detail.
Like what?
Well, think about the entire event, from the planning stages all the way to wrapping things up afterwards.
Okay.
What steps would you take to make sure everything stays on track?
Well, the career guide mentions that you have to collaborate with all the different departments,
Mm-hmm.
like marketing and ticketing and operations.
Right, it's all about teamwork.
Yeah, it's like conducting an orchestra.
That's a great analogy.
Everyone has to be in sync.
But what about risk management?
Okay, so like what if something goes wrong?
Exactly, like what if their performer gets sick, or the equipment breaks, or there's a sudden storm?
Or a global pandemic.
Right. Interviewers want to know you can think ahead and have backup plans.
That makes sense.
And remember that entry-level venue programmer profile we talked about earlier?
Mm-hmm.
They were all about keeping meticulous records and staying on top of the budget.
Those are good examples to mention.
It shows you're organized.
Right.
But even with the best planning in the world, things can still go wrong.
Of course, you can't predict everything.
So tell me about a time when an event you were managing hit a snag.
Okay.
And how did you handle it?
Ooh, good question.
This is your chance to show off your problem-solving skills.
I have so many stories.
I bet you do.
Okay, so moving on, let's talk about vendors.
Yes, vendors are essential.
Because the next question is, how do you manage vendor relationships to ensure high-quality services?
It's not just about caterers and sound technicians.
Right, there's so many different types of vendors.
You've got lighting designers, security personnel, the artists themselves.
Wow, so many people to manage.
It's all about building good relationships and having clear communication.
Right, you have to treat everyone with respect.
Exactly, and you're representing your organization, so you want vendors who reflect your values.
Okay.
You could even mention asking potential vendors about their experience with similar events.
That's a good idea.
So let me ask you this. What if you have a vendor who just keeps messing up?
Oh, that's tough.
Yeah, even though you've tried to communicate your expectations.
You have to find that balance between maintaining a good relationship and also holding them accountable. You could mention establishing performance metrics,
Yes, good.
providing constructive feedback.
And ultimately being ready to make a tough decision.
Right, if they're just not cutting it.
Exactly. You can't be afraid to move on.
Okay, so the next question is about staying ahead of the curve.
Okay, so how do you stay up to date with industry trends and best practices?
Oh, this one's all about showing you're committed to learning,
Exactly.
but it's not enough to just say you read Trade Magazine.
No, you need to show them how you actively seek out new information.
So like attending conferences, workshops,
Yeah.
webinars, relying industry leaders on social media,
Yes.
maybe even listening to podcasts like this one.
Of course.
The Career Guide also suggests subscribing to publications and websites, joining online forums.
There are so many resources out there.
It's important to find the ones that resonate with you.
Yes. Find your niche.
All right, question 6 is a big one. How do you ensure that events are inclusive and accessible to all attendees?
This one's all about empathy and attention to detail.
Right, you have to think about everyone.
Think about people with disabilities, different cultural backgrounds, families with young children.
Everyone should feel welcome.
The Career Guide emphasizes diverse programming and community engagement.
Those are good starting points.
So build on that foundation and think about accessibility when choosing venues, when planning the seating arrangements, even when designing your marketing materials.
I see.
Would you offer assistive listening devices, sign language interpreters, materials in multiple languages?
Those are all really good ideas.
It shows you're thinking about everyone, and that reflects well on you and the organization.
Okay, let's get a little bit data-driven now.
Okay, sounds good.
The next question is, how do you measure the success of an event?
This one's tricky because it's not just about ticket sales, it's also about the bigger picture.
Like, did the event achieve its goals?
Exactly.
Did it engage the community? Did it generate positive buzz?
The Career Guide talks about monitoring and evaluating the success of artistic programs.
So you could talk about tracking attendance, surveying attendees, looking at social media engagement.
Yes, data can tell a compelling story.
And don't forget about the financial side.
Of course.
Did the event meet its budget?
Were there any unexpected costs or revenue?
Right.
So let me ask you, how would you go about setting realistic financial goals for an event? Considering things like ticket pricing, marketing expenses, artist fees.
Well, you have to find that sweet spot where the event is financially sustainable,
Right.
but you're not compromising on quality or accessibility.
Great.
You could mention researching industry benchmarks, looking at past events.
And being ready to make adjustments as needed.
Right, because things change.
They always do.
Okay, so the next question dives even deeper into finances.
Okay.
How do you manage event budgets to ensure financial success?
Ooh.
This one's all about showing you can handle money responsibly.
It is.
So imagine you're given a budget for a concert series.
Okay.
How would you allocate those funds across all the different areas?
Like artist fees, marketing, venue, rental, production.
All of it.
The mid-level venue programmer profile in the career guide talks about overseeing the finances.
So you could talk about creating detailed budget plans, tracking expenses.
And finding creative ways to make the most of your resources.
Right, without sacrificing quality.
But what about contingency planning?
So what happens if there are unforeseen expenses?
Exactly. Do you have a plan B?
You have to be able to adjust on the fly.
Exactly.
Okay, on to question 9. How do you collaborate with internal teams and stakeholders to ensure event success?
This one's all about teamwork and communication.
Venue programmers don't work in a vacuum.
They're constantly interacting with marketing, ticketing operations, senior management.
It's a team effort.
The career guide talks about the importance of collaboration.
Right.
And those example profiles mention successful teamwork experiences.
So you can talk about establishing clear communication channels, actively listening to others' ideas.
And finding solutions when there are disagreements.
We can't always agree.
So tell me about a time when you had to navigate a disagreement with a colleague while working on an event.
Oh, another tricky question.
It happens.
It does.
You want to show that you can handle those situations professionally.
Always focusing on the bigger picture.
Okay, last question for this segment.
Okay, bring it on.
How do you incorporate sustainability and environmental responsibility into event planning?
This is a big one these days.
It is?
And it's about taking action, not just talking.
Exactly.
So think about every aspect of the event.
Venue selection, catering, waste management, transportation.
How can you minimize the environmental impact?
The career guide might not mention sustainability specifically,
Uh-huh.
but it does emphasize staying current with industry trends.
And sustainability is definitely a trend.
It is.
So you can talk about choosing eco-friendly venues, sourcing local food, using reusable decorations, reducing paper waste.
And encourage people to use public transportation.
And don't forget about educating the attendees.
Yes.
You could include information about sustainability in your marketing.
Or have recycling stations at the event.
Right. People need to be reminded.
They do.
Okay, that wraps up our deep dive into those 10 interview questions.
Phew.
But we've got more insights coming up, so don't go anywhere.
Okay, so we just went through 10 common interview questions for venue programmers.
Yeah. Hopefully that was helpful.
But RoleCatcher has more than just interview prep.
Oh, right.
They also have these AI tools that can really help you in your job search.
Yeah, we talked about that earlier. They have that AI that analyzes job descriptions and scores your CV.
Right. It's like having a personal recruiter.
In your pocket.
Yeah, exactly. And what's really cool is that it can actually tell you what your CV might be missing.
Oh, wow. So it's like giving you advice.
Exactly. Like, let's say a job description really emphasizes budgeting experience.
Okay.
But your CV focuses more on your creative programming skills. The AI might suggest that you highlight your budgeting experience more.
Oh, to make sure the employer sees it.
Right. So it's not just about having the skills.
It's about showcasing them in the right way.
Exactly. And this all ties back to what we've been talking about with tailoring your answers to specific job requirements.
So the AI can help you figure out what the employer really wants.
Exactly. And then you can emphasize those things in your CV and your interview answers.
Like a cheat sheet.
It is.
Okay, so speaking of working smarter, not harder, the career guide talks about building a portfolio.
Yes.
As a way to showcase your work.
It's like a visual representation of your experience.
Okay.
So you could include photos and videos from past events.
Ooh, and maybe even testimonials.
From artists or attendees.
Right, like people saying you did a good job.
Exactly. It's like a highlight reel of your best work.
And it goes beyond just listing your responsibilities.
Right. It shows what you're actually capable of.
Okay, so it's not just what you've done.
But what you can do.
I like that.
Like if you're really passionate about showcasing emerging artists.
Okay.
Your portfolio could highlight events where you gave new talent a platform.
Right, showing you're willing to take risks.
Exactly. It tells a story about your values.
Okay, so your portfolio shows your style and the type of events you're good at organizing.
Like, do you prefer big music festivals or small, intimate performances?
It shows your range.
Exactly.
Yep.
Now let's talk about career progression.
Okay, because you don't want to be a venue programmer forever.
Well, you could if you wanted to.
True.
But the career guide mentions some other paths you could take.
Like what?
Like you could become a director of programming.
Okay.
Or an executive director.
Yes.
You could even move into talent management or production.
Wow, so many options.
Yeah, there are a lot of possibilities.
That's exciting.
It is. And it's not just about putting on events.
Right.
It's about fostering creativity, building community, making an impact.
So well said.
Speaking of making an impact, remember that wildcard event we talked about?
The one you would create if you had no limitations.
Yeah, don't forget about that idea.
It's important to hold on to that spark.
It could be the start of something amazing.
Your own venue someday.
Or just a reminder of why you love this field.
Okay, and before we move on, we should talk about networking again.
Yes, networking is crucial.
The career guide mentions conferences, festivals, trade shows.
And don't forget about online forums and groups.
Right, you can connect with people all over the world.
But networking is about more than just collecting business cards.
It's about building relationships,
Having real conversations.
learning from each other.
That person you meet at a conference could be your future boss.
Or a mentor or a collaborator.
It's an investment in your career.
So plant those seeds and nurture those relationships.
Okay, now let's go back to that question about measuring the success of an event.
The one that's not just about ticket sales.
Right. We talked about tracking attendance, gathering feedback, and analyzing social media.
But we also need to think about how this specific venue defines success.
Exactly, because it might be different for each venue.
So is it about ticket sales, critical acclaim, community impact?
You need to align your answer with their values.
Right. Show them you understand what they care about.
It shows you've done your homework.
Okay, now let's revisit the question about making events inclusive.
Okay.
We talked about being mindful of diverse needs, but how would you go about programming events that specifically cater to underserved communities?
That's a great question. It's about going beyond just making events accessible.
Right.
And creating opportunities for underrepresented communities.
So they can participate and feel represented.
And even take the lead.
You're shaping the cultural narrative.
Remember that junior venue programmer profile?
The one who is passionate about emerging talent.
Yeah. Could you use those qualities to create events that showcase artists from underrepresented backgrounds?
Absolutely. You could partner with local organizations,
Offer mentorship programs.
create dedicated performance spaces,
It's about using your platform to amplify those voices.
and make a statement about your values.
That kind of initiative will definitely make you stand out.
Okay, so now let's talk about financial management.
Okay. Money, money, money.
How would you manage event budgets to ensure financial success?
This is where you show them you can handle money responsibly.
The mid-level venue programmer profile talked about overseeing finances,
Right, so you could talk about creating budgets, tracking expenses.
finding ways to maximize resources.
And what about those unexpected expenses?
Right, those always pop up.
Do you have strategies for adjusting the budget without sacrificing the event?
You have to be able to think on your feet.
Okay, so we've talked about budgets, sustainability, networking.
What other skills do you think are important for venue programmers?
Well, beyond the practical skills, I think soft skills are crucial.
Okay, like what?
Communication, interpersonal skills, building relationships.
Right, you're interacting with a lot of different people.
Artists, vendors, colleagues, community members.
It's about fostering those connections.
Then creating a collaborative environment.
And don't forget about resilience.
Yes, things don't always go according to plan.
You have to be able to handle setbacks, stay calm under pressure,
And find creative solutions.
learn from your mistakes.
Exactly. And that brings us back to continuous learning.
Right, the career guide highlights that.
It's about staying curious, seeking out new knowledge,
Attending conferences, reading publications, taking online courses.
talking to other professionals.
There's so many ways to keep learning.
So remember, the journey of a venue programmer is continuous evolution.
You have to embrace new challenges, hone your skills.
And find ways to bring your vision to life.
So keep learning, keep growing, keep pushing the boundaries.
That's great advice.
Okay, so welcome back to the deep dive.
It's great to be back.
We've covered so much ground already, from AI-powered resumes to contract negotiations.
It's been a wild ride.
But before we wrap things up, I want to revisit the idea of measuring event success.
Hey, we talked about that earlier.
Because it's not just about ticket sales, although that's obviously important.
It's not the only thing that matters.
So we talked about things like gathering feedback, analyzing social media engagement, even looking at the community impact.
All important factors.
But here's something else to think about. How does this particular venue define success?
Ooh, that's a great point.
Because it might be totally different from another venue.
Yeah, it's not one size fits all.
So you have to think about their specific goals and values.
Like, are they focused on ticket sales and revenue, or is it more about critical acclaim and artistic innovation?
Or maybe it's about engaging the community.
It could be a combination of all those things.
Exactly. So you have to understand their priorities and tailor your answers accordingly.
Right. Show them you've done your research.
Okay, now let's go back to the question about making events inclusive and accessible.
Okay. Inclusivity is key.
We talked about being mindful of diverse needs and removing barriers.
Right. Making sure everyone feels welcome.
But how would you go about actively programming events that cater to underserved communities?
So it's not just about accessibility, it's about creating opportunities.
Right, giving them a platform.
Remember that junior venue programmer profile we discussed? The one who was so passionate about emerging talent.
Yeah, they had a good eye for spotting new artists.
Could you channel those qualities to create events that showcase artists from underrepresented backgrounds?
I think so. You could partner with local organizations, offer mentorship programs, even create dedicated performance spaces.
It's about amplifying those voices and making a statement about your values.
And I think that's what makes this role so special.
It's more than just a job.
It's about making a difference.
Speaking of making a difference, remember that wildcard event we talked about?
The one that pushes boundaries and showcases your unique vision.
Don't let that idea fade away.
It could be the start of something truly amazing.
Your own venue someday.
Or maybe it just reminds you why you're so passionate about this field. So to wrap things up, I just want to say that the journey of a venue programmer is a continuous evolution.
It's all about learning and growing.
Embrace new challenges, hone your skills, and never stop learning.
And most importantly, never lose sight of the passion that drives you.
That's great advice. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.
It was my pleasure.
We'll be back next time with another fascinating look at the world of careers and professional development.
Until then, keep learning, keep growing, keep dreaming big.